Hello and welcome back once again to the cookie jar. Today we are making the 8th book out of Candy for Christmas. They are called Fudge-aroons. And this one. So with these, you're making 2 different concoctions. You're making basically a layer of chocolate, and sandwiched between those is a layer of coconut. So it sounds to me like these are going to look a little bit like Oreos with a chocolate, a white, and a chocolate on top. So that's what I think. Now, both the filling and the cookie, I assume, has to chill in the fridge for at least an hour. Keep that in mind that we are not preheating the oven. So you're going to want a cup of chocolate chips, a cup of butter, half a cup of brown sugar, 1.5 cups of white granulated sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 2 beaten eggs, and 3.5 cups of flour. After they tell you how to put all that together, it has the instructions for the coconut filling, which is 2 cups of shredded coconut, 1 cup of white sugar, and 1 cup of flour, as well as half a cup of cold butter. That's 1/4 cup. And 2 beaten eggs. There aren't any notes per se. There is an alternative with the coconut filling. If you don't have a food processor, you don't have to buy one to make this cookie. It's just a little messier when the coconut flakes are large or longer. To make this cookie without a food processor, just add all of the ingredients except the butter into a small bowl and stir them up. Then melt the butter and mix it in. And then you proceed to cover it and chill it for an hour. The last little note on this says it yields 5 to 6 dozen yummy cookies. And that Norman wants me to make these cookies even chewier. He says it'll provide more revenue for his dental clinic. He's kidding, I think. So we have everything laid out in the kitchen. So let's get in and get baking. Here is what you're going to need for the chocolate portion. And here is what you are going to need for the coconut filling. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our butter and the chocolate chips, the 1 cup of chocolate chips, into a microwave safe bowl, and you're going to pop it in the microwave for 2 minutes. Once it comes out of the microwave, you're going to stir it smooth, and then you're going to set it aside to let it cool down while you move on to the other ingredients. I would suggest putting the butter on the bottom and the chocolate chips on top, because I'm having a hard time getting them mixed. So we're going to set that off to the side. So the first thing now is to mix the brown sugar. That's half a cup of brown sugar. The 1.5 cups of white sugar. So we're going to mix these together. All right, and to this, we are adding the 2 teaspoons of vanilla, the half a teaspoon of salt, the 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and then we're adding in our 2 beaten eggs. So at this point, you're supposed to check your chocolate and see if it feels cool enough to add it so you don't scramble the eggs. Mine still feels pretty warm, so I'm going to give it about 2 or 3 minutes more to cool down before we add it in. Okay, so now that the chocolate has cooled down, we're adding it into the sugar and the egg. That looks pretty well in there. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to be adding in the flour in 1/2 cup increments. So. It's definitely gotten very thick. I'm going to scrape down the beaters and the sides of the bowl before I add this last one, just because I'm starting to get the feeling that a lot of it's clumping up in the center of the beaters and not mixing as well as it should. And our last 1/2 cup. All the little bits have pretty much scraped itself off the sides of the bowl. It's kind of reminding me of a dough, like a pie dough or a pizza dough, the way it's basically scraped itself off the sides of the bowl and pulled away. It's very thick. I wouldn't not do this by hand because the mixer is struggling to do it. Okay, so for this portion, we're done. We just need to cover it and stick it in the fridge while we mix the filling. Now we've gotten out our food processor. Now remember, there were instructions at the beginning that you can do this without. We're gonna take our 2 cups of coconut and our 1 cup of sugar and our 1 cup of flour. And we are going to mix these together. Now, it says to mix these until the coconut flakes are no longer than 1/4 inch. It says to cut the butter into 4 pieces and to pulse again until the mixture looks like coarse. Okay, sorry about that. We seem to have lost some footage. So we zipped up the butter until it was basically blended in and it was still very dry, very crumbly. It didn't really look like you'd added any butter. And then we added in the eggs, and now we've got a mixture that looks a bit like this. Now we just pour this into another bowl, cover it with plastic wrap, and we pop that in the fridge with the chocolate mixture, and we let them sit for about an hour. Okay, so I have preheated the oven to 350. And now what we're gonna be doing is with the large cookie scoop of mine, I'm going to make 12 balls of the chocolate mix, and then we're flattening those down. And then with the smaller scoop, we're taking 12 scoops of the coconut mixture and putting them on top. And then we're gonna flatten that down. And then we're gonna take another 12 scoops of the chocolate, put them on top of the coconut, and flatten those down. And then they'll bake for about 9 to 11 minutes. Then we'll cool them on the sheets and then for 2 minutes, and then they'll go on the wire rack. It does say greased cookie sheets, and of course I've got my silicone mat. Let's get started with what we have. Oy, this is definitely rock solid. I almost would have preferred not putting this in the fridge. Here is the chocolate. Now we've got 12 balls of chocolate, and now we just have to push them down. Now it doesn't say how flat to make them, it just says to push them down. And now we want the 12 balls of coconut. No. There is the coconut. It does say on the recipe that if you have leftover coconut, you can put that on a tray with a chocolate chip on top. Now this is sticky, so I don't know if I want to push this down with my hand so much as maybe a spoon or something, because I think it's going to stick to your hands if you try to push it down with your hand or your palm or whatever they say. See, this is what I was afraid of. It's very sticky. I wonder. Yeah. So that works rather well. Pushing it down with the plastic wrap. Well, maybe fix the first one. know that it said to refrigerate this, but I am seriously wondering if that was a good idea, because this is definitely, I feel, harder to work with while it's cold like this. I think I would have just let it sit a little bit, maybe, but 30 or maybe 30 minutes. An hour is just too much, in my opinion, for this. Because especially now I'm supposed to flatten these, but they are so hard that it's not going to be able to flatten on the cookie without messing the stuff up underneath. So I guess, because they should be the same size as the bottom ones. So I'm going to take each one off, flatten it, and pop it back up there. That seems the easiest way to do this without destroying everything else. But you also don't flip these cookies in the oven. So I'm curious about the baking situation. How the one on the bottom is going to get more cooked than the stuff at the top because you're not flipping them at all. So that's also of curiosity to me right now. Okay, so here is a tray of them done. I'm going to finish up the rest of the tray same way. 12 scoops of chocolate, 12 scoops of the coconut, 12 more scoops of chocolate, top them off, and I will see you guys when we get done. So we are finally done baking all of the Fudge-aroons and the little leftovers. So here is the little leftover coconut concoction. It's interesting. It reminds me of something. I feel like I said that a lot. It's very sweet. And it's kind of crunchy from the bottom. But it doesn't overwhelmingly scream coconut. I feel like they're a cute little, almost like a tea cookie. But, yeah. Now, the main recipe was for these Fudge-aroons. One of my favorite people I like to watch on YouTube says they're chunky. They're big. They're chewy. They're heavily chocolate. I don't really get the filling as much. When I was making them, I felt like I was putting in too much, but sitting here with them in my hand, it even looks like a lot of filling to cookie ratio. But after tasting this, knowing what this is supposed to taste like, I don't really taste that in this. It's okay. It's good. It's definitely something I would have no problem eating, or making again. But yeah. Okay. So next week we are doing the last recipe on candy for Christmas. It is a recipe called 3-way fudge. And what it is, from what I've gathered, is it's 1 thing of fudge, but it's got 3 layers. It's like a white, a milk, and a, I don't want to say dark chocolate, but maybe like a semi-sweet chocolate. And you can get all 3 in like one bite. So if you're interested in seeing how that gets put together, join us next week, and we'll see you later.